The day the billionaire's daughter fell silent, the entire hospital floor felt like a cathedral after a funeral. Machines hummed, monitors blinked, and the most powerful man in the city stood helpless beside a wheelchair, staring at the tiny fingers of his only child that refused to move. Money had built empires for him. Influence had bent governments, but neither could make 12-year-old Isabella Hartley stand again. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of one human heart to change another's destiny, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Stories like this travel farther when hearts travel with them. 3 months earlier, Isabella had been running down the marble staircase of the Hartley estate, laughing as sunlight poured through the stained glass windows. Alexander Hartley, CEO of Hartley Global Enterprises, had been on a conference call about a $1 billion acquisition when he heard the crash. The sound split through the mansion like a gunshot. By the time he reached the foyer, his daughter lay twisted at the base of the stairs, her small body frighteningly still. The diagnosis came like a verdict. Severe spinal trauma, partial paralysis from the waist down. "We will try everything," the doctors had promised. Alexander had nodded, jaw clenched, writing checks before they even asked. He flew in specialists from Europe. He commissioned private research teams. He converted an entire wing of the estate into a rehabilitation center that looked more advanced than most hospitals. Yet every morning, Isabella sat in her wheelchair staring out at the garden she used to run through, and every night Alexander sat in his study, staring at financial projections he could still control, because that was easier than staring at his daughter's broken dreams. Isabella changed in ways no medical chart could measure. The girl who once loved painting the sunrise began pulling her curtains shut. The girl who once filled the house with music stopped touching her piano. Her mother had passed away years earlier, and now her world felt like it had shrunk to the size of her chair. Therapists came and went, some were too clinical, some too forceful, some too careful. None could reach her heart. And then one ordinary Tuesday, a man walked into the estate who did not look like he belonged there. His name was Daniel Whitaker. He was not a famous specialist flown in from abroad. He did not arrive in a luxury car. He came on a bus, carrying a worn leather bag and a folded resume that had been printed twice because the ink had smudged the first time. Daniel was a single father to a 7-year-old boy named Noah. His wife had died in a car accident 4 years earlier, leaving him with grief and a child who still sometimes cried for a mother he barely remembered. Daniel had once been a physical therapist at a respected rehabilitation center, but after missing too many shifts to care for Noah during a severe asthma episode, he had lost his job. Since then, he had taken temporary contracts wherever he could. When he heard that the Hartley estate was hiring yet another therapist for Isabella, he hesitated. He knew men like Alexander Hartley did not usually look twice at people like him. But he needed the job. More than that, something about the story of a young girl who had stopped believing she could move stirred something in him that felt personal. Alexander almost dismissed him at the door. Daniel's suit was simple, slightly faded at the cuffs. There was no prestigious hospital logo stamped across his resume. But Daniel's eyes were steady. Not arrogant, not desperate, just steady. He asked for 10 minutes with Isabella before any decision was made. Alexander agreed, more out of exhaustion than hope. The first time Daniel entered Isabella's room, he did not talk about muscles or therapy schedules. He did not promise miracles. He simply sat beside her and noticed the half-finished painting resting against the wall. A sunset, abandoned midway. He told her he used to paint terrible landscapes with his son, and how Noah insisted that trees could be purple if they felt like it. Isabella did not respond at first. But her eyes flickered. It was the first spark anyone had seen in weeks. Daniel understood something that others had missed. Isabella was not only paralyzed in body. She was paralyzed in spirit. She did not need someone to force her legs to move. She needed someone to remind her why moving mattered. His therapy was unconventional. He combined physical exercises with small goals tied to things Isabella loved. If she managed to lift her leg a centimeter, they would add a brushstroke to the painting. If she completed her breathing exercises, he would tell her a story about Noah's latest school adventure. Slowly, painfully, almost invisibly, progress began. Alexander watched from a distance at first. He was used to controlling outcomes. Daniel refused to guarantee anything. When Alexander demanded timelines, Daniel calmly explained that healing did not follow quarterly reports. It followed courage. For a man who measured life in profits and losses, that answer was infuriating. But he could not argue with the tiny changes he was seeing. Isabella began waking earlier. She asked for her piano to be opened again. She even requested to try standing with assistance. The first time she attempted to stand between the parallel bars Daniel had installed in the rehab wing, her hands trembled violently. Her legs buckled almost instantly. She collapsed back into the wheelchair, tears spilling down her cheeks. The room felt heavy with disappointment. Alexander turned away, unable to bear it. But Daniel did not flinch. He knelt in front of Isabella, reminding her that falling did not mean failing. He told her about the nights he had stayed up with Noah during asthma attacks, feeling helpless, feeling like he was losing. He told her that strength was not about never breaking. It was about choosing to rebuild. Days turned into weeks. Isabella's muscles responded slowly, as if remembering an old language. There were setbacks. Some mornings she woke up with pain so sharp it stole her breath. Some nights Daniel went home exhausted, wondering if he was giving her false hope. Yet every time he considered stepping back, he saw Noah waiting at their small kitchen table, drawing superheroes with crooked capes. Daniel realized that if he quit on Isabella, he would be teaching his own son to quit on people too. The breakthrough came quietly. It was raining outside, the kind of steady rain that makes the world feel suspended. Isabella insisted on trying again. Daniel positioned himself beside her, not holding her up, just close enough to catch her if she fell. She gripped the bars. Her arms strained. Her legs trembled violently. For a moment it looked like another failure. And then, almost imperceptibly, her knees locked. She was standing. Not perfectly, not steadily, but undeniably, gloriously standing. Alexander, who had entered the room midway, froze in the doorway. His breath caught in his chest. For 3 endless seconds, Isabella held herself upright. 3 seconds that felt like an eternity. When she finally sank back into the chair, she was laughing through tears. From that day forward, progress accelerated. With braces and support, Isabella took her first step. Then another. Each movement was a battle, but now it was a battle she believed she could win. Her paintings returned, brighter than before. She began composing simple melodies on the piano, songs that sounded like resilience. Alexander changed too. Watching Daniel balance fatherhood, financial struggle, and unwavering compassion reshaped him. He learned that leadership was not about domination. It was about presence. He started spending evenings not in his office, but in the rehab wing, reading to Isabella or simply sitting beside her. One afternoon, Isabella asked about Noah. A week later, Alexander arranged for Daniel to bring his son to the estate. The sight of the billionaire's daughter and the therapist's son racing toy cars across the polished floor blurred the lines of status and wealth. Children did not care about net worth. They cared about connection. Months after that first fragile stand, Isabella walked across the garden with a cane, sunlight warming her face. The same garden she once thought she would only see from a window. Alexander stood nearby, tears unapologetically streaming down his face. Daniel watched quietly, pride and humility woven together. Alexander offered Daniel a permanent position, not just as Isabella's therapist but as director of a new foundation dedicated to accessible rehabilitation for children who could not afford it. Daniel hesitated, overwhelmed. He had walked in asking only for a chance to help one girl. Now he was being offered the chance to help thousands. The day Isabella walked unassisted across the stage at a charity gala, the room rose in a standing ovation. Cameras flashed. Applause thundered. But what mattered most was the quiet moment afterward, when she wrapped her arms around Daniel and whispered her gratitude into his shoulder. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something from the heart. Please comment the word hope if you believe one act of kindness can rewrite someone's destiny. Because the truth is, Isabella's healing was not just about medicine. It was about a single father who refused to see a broken child as a lost cause. It was about a CEO who learned that power means nothing without compassion. It was about a little girl who discovered that her strength had never left her, it had simply been waiting for someone to remind her. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you believe again in second chances and quiet heroes who change the world without headlines, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe so we can continue telling stories that matter. Your engagement helps these messages reach hearts that might be standing on the edge of giving up. In the end, Isabella did not just learn to walk again. She learned that sometimes the greatest miracles do not arrive in private jets or expensive suits. Sometimes they arrive on a bus, carrying a worn leather bag, and a simple sentence that changes everything. let me help her.